Hey, thanks for being a part of the conversation. Let's do some pod crashing. Episode number 339 is with comedian Gary Vider from the podcast Number One Dad.
Hey, what's up? How are you?
Wow, what a podcast, because I would love to see the research on the number of men and women that want to know what their dad was up to. Because, I mean, this thing opened up my heart in so many different angles.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, the interesting thing about doing this podcast is that it's about my relationship with my father, who is a con man that I stopped talking to 24 years ago. And the goal is to track him down and find out what he's up to after all this time. Is he still running cons? Is he a different man? Like, who knows what's been happening in this span of 24 years. But yeah, it also takes in the fact that it's not just me. Like, when somebody listens to it, they kind of put themselves in the situation, and they kind of look at it where, hey, I might have stopped talking to my parent or a sibling, and now I want to figure out how do I go and do that. And this podcast shows you how I'm doing it, and maybe they could follow that same path. I'm so jealous of you that you had a father that wanted to do adventurous things. I mean, because oh my God, to be that reporter, to go into Madison Square Gardens, come on now, that in itself had to be a blast. Yeah, the biggest, my dad would involve me in his cons. And the biggest con that we did together was that in the early 90s, he and we posed as a Sports Illustrated for Kids reporter. That was me. And then he posed as a Sports Illustrated for Kids photographer. And we went to over 50 games without tickets. We'd go as the press, and they would give us access to just walk around the garden without tickets. I'd sit in any available seat or up in the press area. My dad would be off taking pictures with the other camera guys. And this is between the ages of when I was 9 to 13. And then when the games would end, I would go in the locker rooms and I'd interview the players. And again, we're posing as these people. It's not legit whatsoever, but we did it for 4 years. And like I said, over 50 games. And I met and interviewed Michael Jordan. Yes. I was at the Rangers Stanley Cup games, Game 1, Game 5, and Game 7. I sat glass at Game 7, and I would go into the locker rooms of both the Rangers and the Canucks when they won when the Rangers won the Stanley Cup, and then I went to the team after party. It was it was a pretty crazy experience. And yeah, my dad was definitely adventurous, but what comes along with having a dad as a con man is that, and especially one of the best con men, I'd have to say, is that because he never got caught, is that you're around somebody who's constantly lying. Yeah. So that's your dad. Your dad is always lying. You have to take everything that he says with a grain of salt. But what his lessons were to me as a kid were way different than what my friends were getting from their dads. They're playing catch with their dad, but meanwhile, my dad's, he's working in the payphone business. He's telling me and teaching me how to take a payphone off the wall because that's one of his competitors and he's stealing their payphone. So it's different things that you're learning. You're learning how to kind of the street smarts in a way of a con man, as opposed to the morality a father usually teaches their son.
I could totally relate with what you were going through when it came to the security at Madison Square Garden, because once they start recognizing you, you don't have to show the badge. They just let you in.
Yeah, we became a familiar face. So after you do it a few times, I mean, people are just recognizing you because we're constantly there. And my dad would always take pictures of the security guards also. My dad thought of everything. So he's taking pictures of the security guards when they're at the games, and he would just hand them to them. And, this is before digital phones where everybody had a million pictures of themselves. So this is a big deal. And it's my dad was a good photographer too. So these are professional shots of these guys, and you got a security guard, and you could see Patrick Ewing in the background of him, and it's these cool shots, and these guys appreciated it. And so when they'd see us, we're walking on the court at the end of each quarter and things like that. So you're getting access in the best possible way, on top of having your press badge.
What I love about this podcast is that a lot of people do not go back and tell the story of their parents and the parents before them. And I realize there's a darker side to this, but the fact that you took the time to look into your son's eyes and everything changed because you weren't going to be like your dad.
Yeah, and also that was a fear of mine, especially becoming a father, is that I didn't want to repeat the same mistakes. Yeah. I mean, that's the last thing you want to do. So you have this choice, and it's I guess it's a very conscious decision, because I thought about it a lot. Where do I which way am I going to go? Because I was taught every wrong way also. So, but I saw the way that my dad was. I saw how my parents' marriage ended up. I saw how his relationship with his kids went. And when I had a kid, and of course, over the time of my wife being pregnant, I was really concentrating on thinking about how am I going to be? How am I going to be as a dad? And my son was very very little. Now he's turned 4. But when he was very little, you're just going through it step by step, and you're seeing it, and you realize like he's so impressionable, and it's my being as a father to teach him the right way. And that's the way that I wanted to be.
Do you really want your father to admit that he was a con? Because, I mean, that would be a scary moment for me, because my father, I didn't know my father, but I knew he was out there for a long time. And there's word that he lost his life, but I don't believe it.
It's not necessarily admitting that he's a con. It's really reflecting on what our relationship was. The cons are just, really an interesting plus, and it really defines his character a lot. So I guess it's more so, hey, have you changed? Are you still this con man?
Yeah.
Or have you, where do you see like the decisions that you also made and the impact that you had on myself and both of my sisters and my mom? Do you feel regret? Do you feel sadness? And also, my dad and I were going to these games, right? We're when we go to these games at Madison Square Garden, and we're not going as father and son. He wouldn't say that I'm his son. He would say that he was a photographer and I was this kid reporter, like this genius kid reporter who got this gig. So we would then go to the game, and then my dad would be off taking pictures with the other photographers, and then I would find a seat that he had put aside for me, or I'd be up in the press area, and then I'd be walking around the garden by myself, and then eventually we would meet up when the game ended, or again like at the end of a quarter or a period in hockey. So we were never having this exact father-son moment. So one of the things that I would try and look for if I get to talk to my dad is, were you doing this for me, or were you doing this for yourself? Because he seemed to really get off on lying. Yeah. And the lie was the accomplishment. The lie was everything to him, and succeeding in that lie was really, it seemed like that was what brought him joy. And did it bring you more joy than me going to a game? Because we never sat together. We never had that exact father-son bond that everybody had. And as I grew older, I really wanted that. And I saw my friends had that, a lot with their dads. But this is very relatable because, like you said, you never met your father, and there are a lot of people like this out there who, might be estranged from a parent or a sibling, and they could really connect with it. And even if you haven't had that experience, you could see what it's like if you didn't grow up with great parents, and maybe this makes you appreciate your parents more.
I'm one of those people that likes to break things down. I don't see your father as a con. I see him as a brilliant actor. And then I look at your life and I'm going, he's a comedian. Oh my God, he's got the gift. He is a performer. Do you see your dad that he could have been an actor?
Yeah, and that's probably why I wanted to be in a comic, because I saw the lies that he told, and I saw the effort that went into those lies, and I thought that he could have been anything that he wanted to be. Yeah, he just had to dedicate himself to a certain field, but he dedicated himself to ripping people off, and that's it. And I really do feel that it brought him so much joy that it really took over with whatever he was doing. I mean, he was in several different businesses as I was growing up, and all resulted in him ripping people off some way or another, some creative scheme. So, but me becoming a comic, it's definitely a result of how I grew up. I saw that somebody, and also the people that I was able to meet over time, going in the garden, going to Madison Square Garden and meeting these athletes, meeting celebrities, I met Bill Murray, I met Cindy Crawford, I met Richard Gere. Those were my favorite ones, which is why I mentioned them. But meeting these people who you don't think that you ever have a chance to actually be face to face with I was showed that you could accomplish things that might seem impossible. Yep. And it showed you, if my dad really wanted to do something, he could do it. And that's the way I approach comedy, especially when I was first starting, and it would keep me going, because comedy, it's tough. You're going to open mics. You're performing in a room that might have 2 people, and you paid to get on stage, but you got to fight through it. And fortunately, my career is going well, and I do believe that my childhood played a part in the fact that I was able to have success.
I got to ask you kind of a personal question, in the way that I've been told several different times that the reason why I'm a podcaster is because it's great therapy. Do you feel it to be great therapy as well?
Yeah, so I never did a podcast before. I'd be on other podcasts, but I never felt that I wanted to share much. So when I decided to do this, I wanted it to be a story where I wasn't thinking that it was going to be therapeutic. I was thinking more that I was like, oh, I could put out the story that's entertaining. But as I've gone through it, the way that it's been set up, I mean, I see a therapist in my podcast, and I talk it out. We talk the story out, tell everybody, what happened and I get their opinions. You're really having this conversation that I never had. And when I was younger, when I was about 15, 16 years old, I started seeing a therapist. And my therapist, when I was 15, I would tell them the story. And then a year later, I found it was when I was in high school. Then a year later, I found that therapist left, and I had to tell another therapist my story again. Yeah. And to me, once that happened, once I had to tell my story again to a completely different person, when you think that this person was so attached to you, I felt a loss. And this is kind of where I was at with my relationship with people, and what was happening with my dad is that people come and go in your life, and it didn't teach me anything. So it took me from that time when I was 15, 16 till now to finally be able to tell the story and just kind of put it to bed. I've been walking around with this story for a very long time in my head, and getting it out really has been a good feeling.
Oh my God. When you sat down to talk with Jamie and she directs you towards Danielle, holy crap, dude. And you hadn't been with Danielle in 6 years.
Correct. Yeah. So Jamie's my sister, and I have a great relationship with Jamie, and my other sister Danielle. We stopped talking, and it was 6 years ago. Wow. And the reason we stopped talking is because I found out that she started talking to my father again. But what I learned from talking to her is that she also had to then stop talking to him again because she felt that he hasn't changed. And the timeline of that was about 3-4 years ago, when she last stopped speaking to him. So, and I'm on a path to try and figure out right now where my dad is, because nobody has seen him in about right now what I figure is about the last 3.5 years. So trying to locate him, and it's not the easiest thing to track down a man who is a full-fledged con artist.
Yeah, and then having that conversation with your mom. I remember what my mother would say: "I don't remember, son. I don't remember." And it's like, Mom, you have to remember. You're not that old. I don't remember. I don't remember. Did you face any of that?
With my mom, or with people in general?
Well, when you would try to have that conversation with your mom about your dad, I don't remember. I just don't remember.
Yeah. So what? The hard thing was with my mom is that my mom and I have never talked about my dad. Once she got out of the house when I was 15, and I followed her, but we kind of just I guess mentally, telepathically just agreed never to talk about him, never to mention his name. And then so I had to approach her because she is the person who knows him better than anybody. And I wanted to really get the story. I wanted to hear what happened. And she's definitely fearful of what could possibly happen by me opening up this door to bringing my father back in my life. She doesn't think that he could change.
Right.
That's kind of where, when I do talk to people, my sisters included, they feel the same way, and that I'm opening up Pandora's box. So when I approached my mom about it, she didn't want anything to do with it out of fear of any possible repercussions or blowback.
The podcast we're talking about is Number One Dad. I do giggle like a child when I hear that your dad faked being a cop. But the thing is that the other side of my imagination is going, but why didn't he go to jail for this?
Yeah, I mean, my dad made his life out of impersonating different people. It's a guy who, you'd be talking to, and you're like, oh, wow, French, and I mean, it's impressive. It's like, oh, you could speak fluent German. It's unbelievable. But yeah, he had the ability to turn himself into whatever person that he wanted to be. And so yeah, when it came down to, impersonating a cop, my dad would see not only every angle and like, oh, I'll impersonate a cop and I'll use it to, fly down, the Long Island Expressway, or I'll use it to pull over somebody who I shouldn't pull over, but I'm going to use it as a way to put fear in this person, because my dad would drive an unmarked cop car.
Yes.
And
yes.
And this is something that he would do. But now he would also, this is a person who could talk his way out of anything. So he had friends in the police department, and he had acquaintances, and my dad seemed to have known everybody, and he seemed to definitely piss off people, but he also seemed to have a good number of people in his corner too that he knew not to piss off.
How did you deal with the vacancy? In other words, when you're out there having a great time, even though you know your dad is doing what he's doing, but the thing is that your adrenaline is on a rush as well. How did you deal with the vacancy when it was no longer there?
Without like having a rush of being around a con man and pulling cons and stuff like that with my dad.
God, I would be so addicted to that, because I've been told I'm addicted to excitement.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm going to tell you, like, I mean, when I was a teenager, even, and also when I was going through college, I mean, this is in me. I was taught everything of how to be a con man. Those were my life lessons. So I'm learning from somebody who got through their life by cutting corners, and I witnessed that firsthand. So when it came to studying for a test, I knew I could study, of course, and possibly get a good grade, but I also knew I could figure out a way of how to steal an exam. So I could go into a classroom and I'll know exactly where the exam is that the teacher is going to be giving out the next day, and I'll go into their filing cabinet and take it. And these are things that my dad taught me, and these are things that I did in high school. These are things I did in college, because I would know that nobody else is thinking like this. Mm-hmm. So I would steal things. I would be able to cheat. I would go into somebody's accounting class, and I would take an exam for them. And just because I knew that it's a lot of how my dad would just walk into Madison Square Garden, because sometimes scams are the best ones, are the ones where they just let you in the front door. I knew that too, that I could go and take somebody's accounting exam, and nobody's going to ask, are you in this accounting class, because there's 200 people in it. So you just do these things, and you play ball, and you act like you've been there before. Yep. And you could get away with stuff. So these are things that I was doing. And I mean, I sold drugs in college, and these are things that I'm not proud of, but they're things that I was kind of born to do, and I got away with it. And I got away with it because my father is who he is. I'm my father's son, and I knew that. Hey, I mean, especially back when I was in college, I didn't look like somebody who was a drug dealer. And I used that to my advantage, because when people would be like, he's selling drugs, it would be like, and I would know the right people to sell it to. I wasn't, selling it in a back alley or anything. I was selling it to groups of people, and I had a nice income going on. But when I left college and it was time to go, I was like, I wanted to do stand-up comedy. I'm like, well, my life has to change a little bit. I have to be a little bit more honest. And, as time has gone on, I had to learn a lot. I had to learn about relationships. I eventually met my wife, and I mean, she taught me a lot about relationships and about personal growth. So all these things are definitely things that I had to overcome by having the father that I had. But I really wanted to make a difference and make a change. And you really have to be self-aware of these things that are negative in your actual being. So I've been trying to grow as a person, and obviously nobody's perfect. I make tons of mistakes all the time, but I do want to be, the best dad that I could be, as I'm a father now to two awesome kids. And I want to be there for them, and I want to do things differently than my dad did.
Oh, Gary, you've got to come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Well, you be brilliant today, okay?
Oh, thank you very much.